Hello, my name is Andrew Allen. I'm on the music faculty at Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina, and I'm a Presidential Doctoral Fellow in Music at the University of South Carolina. This is part of a series of videos for young saxophone students and teachers of young saxophone students to hopefully help bridge some of the common misconceptions and concerns that occur and to provide a little bit of aid. Today's topic is improving the saxophone sound. Perhaps more than any other instrument, young saxophonists get a bad rap for playing out of tune, playing with poor sounds, playing very loudly. So here are a few tips to help assuage those concerns. First of all, the young student should know what a good saxophonist sounds like. Perhaps more than any other instrument, the young saxophonist is assaulted with very poor versions of saxophone playing in everyday pop music. So, every teacher should introduce their students to quality examples. In the jazz realm, we're very familiar with a few: John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, the list can go on and on, Chris Potter for tenor players, Phil Woods for alto players, Gary Smulyan for baritone players. In the realm of classical saxophone, perhaps the answers aren't so clear, but a few that I would suggest are Donald Sinta, Timothy McAllister, Joseph Luloff, Otis Murphy, Tamer Sullivan, Clifford Lehman, and Kenneth Che. All of these individuals have lovely, beautiful sounds that can serve as a model for the young saxophonist. Now, what do they have that the young saxophonist doesn't have? Apart from maturity of years, an advanced sense of musical expression, I would say the chief factor between a great saxophone sound and an okay or poor saxophone sound is the idea of resonance. This idea of this beautiful mellifluous sound, the difference between a rather thin sound that might be heard in band rooms across the country and a very rich, full sound. A sound that can fill a room up. This resonance is what we're after. Now, how does one achieve resonance on the saxophone? There are several different methods, several different ways of achieving this quality sound, but perhaps the best known and the most useful is the idea of voicing. Now, voicing was an idea that has been posited by saxophonists the likes of Larry Teal and Donald Sinta, and it's a fairly complicated process and concept, but it can be introduced fairly easily and straightforwardly to young students. The first key to producing resonance on the saxophone, to changing the way that a young saxophonist sounds, is playing just on the mouthpiece alone. So the saxophone embouchure can be rather complicated to teach. Many teachers make the mistake of feeling that it's very similar to a clarinet embouchure, and it's not. While the actual process of forming the saxophone embouchure is perhaps left to another video, one of the easiest ways of setting the proper tension and achieving the proper sound on the saxophone is to match the pitch of just the mouthpiece alone to a tone source. So, the pitch that I normally match to, and this is concert pitch on the piano, is a B5, the B above the B above middle C on piano. So, every morning, to make sure that the embouchure is properly set to achieve proper sound on the saxophone, use some kind of tonal generating source, I'm using a piano, to play that B5 and match it on the mouthpiece. If the young student can do this, their embouchure and all of the other things that go into a proper saxophone sound are in the right place, and they don't have to worry about thinking about all of this verbiage that can very often confuse the young student. So that's the first step. Now, also with the mouthpiece, several exercises in flexibility can be done to adjust intonation on the saxophone, to adjust resonance across the range. Another aspect of voicing is to adjust the position of the tongue, the back of the tongue specifically, in the oral cavity. Of course, if you say this to a young student, their eyes are going to start to glaze over and they're not going to know what you're talking about, and very often you're going to confuse them. A very simple way to start talking about voicing, however, is again to use the mouthpiece. So, I introduce mouthpiece pitch bending exercises to students very early on. We start at that first beat, the first note that we like to have as our reference pitch on the mouthpiece. And then we see how far we can bend it down. I have about an octave. Of course, a young student isn't going to have that in the beginning. They're probably not going to be able to bend pitch much at all. However, allow them time, allow them the space they need to just start to bend the pitch. Not with the embouchure, but with all the stuff in the back of their mouth. They don't need to think about it. Have them say E and O, and have them feel how E feels and how O feels. To lower the pitch on the mouthpiece and on the saxophone, we want them to think about that oh feeling, drawing everything down. So very gradually over time, have them bend it a half step, a whole step, and on and on and on, very slowly. We don't want to overtax the muscles. Very bad for the saxophones. Something else that the young saxophones can do once they've begun to achieve a little bit of flexibility with the mouthpiece is to reunite the mouthpiece with the horn. Now, once the mouthpiece is on the horn, we can also do flexibility bending exercises. I like to start with the B with the octave key, the written B with the octave key on any of the saxophones. It's a fairly easy pitch to bend around, to manipulate. So I start with a very in-tune B, and then see how far the student can bend this rather free pitch. Before the pitch breaks. So I use this exercise across the horn just to give a little bit of flexibility, just to achieve the ability to adjust pitch and to adjust resonance. Now, one of the other exercises that many saxophonists use, this, just as any other saxophone, any other musical instrument, has an overtone series, just like a trumpet does. Hopefully we're all awake now. I did that all just with a low B flat being held. Now, how is this possible? Just as with a bugle, you can manipulate the overtone series to have certain notes pop out. Now, this isn't very important for a young player, but using these overtones to adjust all of the stuff in here to gain flexibility is very important. So, I would have a young student who maybe isn't that adept at the low range yet to play middle B flat, or written middle B flat on the saxophone. And then keeping that pitch in their head, play the same tone, the same middle B flat, with a low B flat fingering. And then, once they can manipulate them, have them bring it all the way down to the low B flat. You do this across the range of the saxophone. Match the middle B natural to the low B natural. And on and on and on. And this, again, will help the student achieve flexibility in their voicings and all of the stuff back here. Now, once the student has achieved some kind of flexibility, they're able to move pitch around, they're able to provide a little bit more resonance to their sound through their voicings. Long tones are something that are extremely important on the saxophone. The student should be able to listen to themselves, gauge really, how do I sound? Do I sound good today? Do I sound bad today? Somewhere in between? What do I like? What do I not like about my sound? They should be able to gauge all of that and make improvements. And perhaps the easiest long tone exercise for any young saxophonist is simply an F major scale in whole notes. So, as with most of the exercises that I do and I encourage any of my students to do, we use the metronome. In this case, set at 60. We always like to hear where the beat is. So, very slowly in whole notes, I'm going to play an F major scale, listening very carefully for articulation, for my vibrato, for my sound, for everything, making sure I match all across the range of the instrument, starting on a low F. And on, back down the range of the horn. This exercise surprisingly highlights a lot of deficiencies in the student's playing, and even in my own playing, but it's very valuable as a first step in long tones and in the concept of working on sound tone production. Another very useful exercise I like to call the chromatic descent exercise. So as you can see on the board, I've written a B flat, and an A. And this is for any saxophone. It's the written B flat, and written A. That's where we start. Again with the metronome. So a half note B flat, and then a whole note A. And when I played that, I was listening for resonance. I was making sure I was filling the room up with sound, listening for all the good qualities that I desire in the sound. Now, of course, there are always things to correct in anyone's playing, so I repeat the same exercise, this time trying to clean up any inadequacies that I noticed the first time. After the first set, the B flat A, you would continue all the way down the horn, descending a half step each time. So the next set would be B flat A flat, and then A flat G, and so on until we reach the very bottom of the horn. If the student practices this exercise very assiduously, the sound's going to open up. They're going to achieve a world of resonance. We've trained the vocal muscles, all of the things in the vocal tract through all these bending exercises, the mouthpiece pitches, and we have them listening to their sound through all of these long tone exercises. So, if there are any more questions or concerns about this, I encourage you to look at my article in the March 2013 issue of the Instrumentalist magazine, where I address saxophone intonation and many of the same concerns that we addressed today. I hope that this helps you. I hope that this helps your students if you're a teacher. And I look forward to seeing you again for the next video.